So, could you use an extra dose of faith to help soothe your soul? Especially if there's something going on in your life right now that's maybe keeping you up at night. Now, even if there's not something going on in your life right now like this, it could be a health challenge, it could be an addiction, it could be finances, it could be something with a particular relationship, or maybe even a career challenge. Something's happening. There's been so much over this last year. Maybe something's going on with your career. But even if you're not going through something right now, I'm pretty sure you can relate to a time in your life when you really, really wanted and needed your faith to be bigger than your fears, right? I mean, we can all relate to this. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for putting your comments in over here. Darn spiffy, David Hart. Euphoric, Paul. Wonderful. Little sister graduated high school. So happy. Yes, congratulations to your little sister, Shanita. How wonderful. Okay, so last week, we looked at FaithLift 101 with faith over fear. That was the message. And what it means to know, to know that you know that you know, that spiritual faith is a deep inner knowing that to have faith in God is actually to have the faith of God. To have faith in God is to have the faith of God. In other words, faith is the spiritual assurance that you always have the power within you to do the seemingly impossible. Now, last week, I also shared a teaching from our Unity co-founder, Charles Fillmore, about faith. And today, I want to kick things off by sharing a powerful passage from Myrtle Fillmore. So giving them some equal time here. So here's what Myrtle wrote. Sometimes we fear that we don't have the ability to do a thing we ought to do. We fear that there are obstacles in the way. If there are obstacles, she writes, we have made them. God never put anything in the way of progress. Now, I really want you to let this sink in because it pretty much says it all, doesn't it? God never put anything in the way of progress. And so before you start with your big buts, and, trust me, we all have them, right? But before you start with, but Ann, you don't understand my situation. And you know what? I don't, unless we've talked, right? I don't understand. But I do have faith in the divine idea that God never put anything in the way of progress. If there's an obstacle, we put it there. And so today we are moving on into FaithLift 102 with my message titled, Spread the Faith. Now, the inspiration for my message today comes from Joseph R. Biden. And it's something that he shared actually quite a lot during his 2020 presidential campaign. And so I trust that regardless of your particular political leanings, that you will appreciate the meaning behind this story. So here's the story that President Biden shares with us. He says, when I say faith, I don't necessarily mean religious faith, though if that's meaningful to you like it is to me, meaning him, then you should carry it with you. What I mean by faith in this sense is about a belief that you can do extraordinary things, whatever the odds. When I would walk out of my grandpa Finnegan's house in Scranton, he would tell me, Joey, Keep the faith. My grandmother would yell back, no, Joey, spread it. Spread the faith. And so that's what we're going to look at this morning, practical ways to practice spreading the faith. So would someone be willing to write that in the chat box? Spread the faith, right? Now, also last week, we talked about how active faith is more than mere believing, right? Because we're not talking about blind faith here. And what I mean by this is that active faith is about real world application, because if you cannot apply these spiritual principles to your life immediately, right now, today, before you leave this service, then honestly, what's the point, right? So from this perspective, it's not just about believing, it's about doing. And so this is why our master teacher and way shower Jesus said over a dozen times in these Christian scriptures to follow me, right? He didn't say worship me. He said follow me. Now, when I talk about this, that Jesus said, follow me, it always reminds me of this great Jesus meme that's been going around social media probably for a couple of years now. You may have seen it, but if you haven't, I'm going to share it with you. So this is Jesus saying, no, I'm not talking about Twitter. I literally want you to follow me. I'm not talking about Twitter. I literally want you to follow me, right? And so Jesus offers us this invitation for a reason. And the reason that he offers it to us is because practicing your faith is not so much about believing, right? I mean, yes, you must believe, right? Ask believing, but practicing your faith is also a practical application, which means that it is also about doing. So it's believing and doing, like following the teachings of Jesus. Now, remember what the master teacher said? What I do, you can do, and even greater works than these. And as you hear me say, some of us really do wish that he hadn't said that, but according to the scriptures, he did. And so what does this really mean? Well, it means that it's not enough, right, to come together, and give some amens and some hallelujahs and take some really good notes. And in the moment, you're like, oh yeah, this is great. I got it. And then you leave the service and you do nothing. You must do something, because practical application is about the doing, and you have to put your faith into practice. For example, activating your faith with real world application could look something like this. Regardless of the fact that you have no idea how something is going to turn out, you do it because you know that God is calling you to do it, right? I mean, it could be something, within, again, a relationship, maybe your marriage. It could be a financial matter. It could be something with your kids or family. It could be something within your community. But whatever it is, you do it even though you have no idea what the outcome is going to be, but you know that God within you, as you, is calling you forward to do it. And isn't this what the life of Jesus modeled for us? This is exactly what Jesus modeled for us. And so let me break it down this way. Your faith is like a muscle, right? And simply put, either you use it or you lose it. It's just that simple. Either you use it or you lose it. Either you exercise it or it will atrophy and wither. And so my question for you this morning is this: how would you exercise your faith? How would you practice your faith? How would you activate your faith if you were absolutely, positively confident that God is in the midst? Think about that. That God never put anything in the way of progress, and that God has ways and ways and ways of presenting things, of allowing things, of moving things that you can't even possibly conceive of, right? Now, I think this is why we hear that phrase about something really putting your faith to the test, right? But the truth is that it's in the doing and in the practical application of actually exercising your faith. That's where you transform an obstacle or a stumbling block into a spiritual stepping stone. That's where the transformation happens. And so confidence in God will get bigger. It will grow bigger with you as you apply this principle and step out in faith. Now, this reminds me of that profound little poem by Patrick Overton, and you might actually even be familiar with it. It says, "When you walk to the edge of all the light you have and take that first step into the darkness of the unknown, you must have faith that one of two things is going to happen. There will be something solid for you to stand on, or you will be taught to fly." You know, this is one of those, like, no matter how many times I hear it or I speak it, it just goes right to my heart, right? And so I want to explore these two possibilities: something solid for you to stand on, or that you'll be taught to fly. And so we'll take a look at something solid to stand on first. Now, one of the single greatest parables in the Gospel of Matthew happens at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus offers us this story. He said, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." Now, if you grew up in church, you're probably already singing that little song that goes with the scripture, right? "On Christ the solid rock I stand," right? I won't sing it all, but you might be. You know, if you grew up going to church camp or grew up in church, you probably heard that. But what I want you to focus on here is the deeper meaning, which is that being founded on rock, you know, being able to stand on solid rock, does not in any way, shape, or form mean that there aren't going to be storms, and there's not going to be wind, and there's not going to be rain, because the rains and the floods and the storms of life will come to visit. And when they do, you want to be ready to flex your faith muscle, right? Because you've built it up. And because you know that you are anchored in the truth, that no matter what, come what may, that you know that you know that you know that God in you as you is in the midst of any and all things. There's no place where God is not. And so this is how we weather the storm, right? I mean, this is the practice. This is the something solid to stand on, like we've done throughout this last year of a pandemic together, right? So, are you with me? That's right, Nancy. All other ground is sinking sand. Okay, so the other possibility is being taught to fly. And I am very excited to share this story with you. This is something that happened just a few weeks ago in early May. Now, this story went viral, but I want to start by sharing the headline from the Washington Post. Here's how it read. Woman who didn't know she was pregnant delivered a preterm baby in flight. NICU nurses happened to be on board. Now, what this headline doesn't tell you is that they were 40,000 feet in the air, mid-flight to Hawaii, with 3 more hours to go. So they were over water. An emergency landing wasn't an option. And so what I want you to know is that everything about this story is about spreading the faith, because this is faith in action. Here's what happened. A 38-year-old woman boarded her flight to Honolulu to go visit family, completely unaware that she was 29 weeks pregnant. Now, evidently, when this happens, it's called cryptic pregnancy, and it happens in about 1 in 400 pregnancies. And it's usually with first-time mothers, and there's often like a hormonal imbalance, which is why this particular mother didn't recognize the signs. And so keep in mind that more rare than cryptic pregnancy is giving birth to one on a plane. And so this precious woman boards her flight, and at a certain point, she started having severe stomach cramps. So of course, she headed for the lavatory, and much to her surprise, and can you just imagine her shock? She gave birth to a 3-pound preemie baby boy. And then she passed out. Now, thank goodness, right? Thank goodness she actually had the presence of mind to catch the baby and to call for help before she passed out. Now, this story is already all kinds of amazing, right? But what happened next, I really think goes in the miracle category, because not only did it turn out that there was a doctor who was a family medicine physician on board, but there was also not 1, not 2, but 3 neonatal intensive care unit nurses on board. They were traveling to Hawaii together to go on vacation, and they put collectively their faith into action. I mean, what a blessing. Now, I don't want to give you the wrong impression here, because by all accounts, this was a harrowing event. I mean, they were severely concerned that this preemie precious baby and the mother weren't going to make it through the first hour. But they got creative. And so they used an Apple Watch as the heart rate monitor, and shoelaces to cut the umbilical cord. And they made a baby-sized beanie out of a worn Reebok sock. And that's not all. To keep this precious one warm, they made like a little incubator with warm bottles of water and some blankets. Now, I mean, this is truly amazing, isn't it? I mean, talk about being taught how to fly. Everything she needed showed up. Everything. All needs met under seemingly impossible circumstances, right? But there were lots of heroes spreading the faith on that flight. I mean, God absolutely, positively was in the midst of this circumstance. And the seemingly impossible turned out just fine. In fact, mother and child now are doing great. And so, if you could use a dose of faith to soothe your soul, whether it's today or another day, I invite you to remember that God never put anything in the way of progress. We're the ones who do that. And so it's up to us to be about the doing of putting our faith into practice. You know, Khalil Gibran said, our anxiety does not come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it. And so I leave you with this. You don't have to control it. You don't have to control it. But I do encourage you to build up your faith muscle so that you're ready for it. And so ends our message for today. Thank you, and God bless you.